Sportsline Podcast has reached the back-to-school season. Thank you so very much for checking in on the CHCH multimedia platform. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Well, as you know, this podcast is a space for the many extraordinary athletes, coaches, executives, and broadcasters who got their start in sports right here in the Golden Horseshoe, and they continue to make their mark in our community. Talk about a talent. This product of Forest Heights Secondary in Kitchener became a CIS standout on the football field at McMaster University. Now, following an outstanding stint with the Marauders that included a Vanier Cup, Mike Daly was drafted by the hometown Tiger Cats, where for nearly a decade he represented the franchise with his high level of play on the field and dedication to others off the field. Now retired, his talents have him coaching, and he's breaking down the Canadian Football League with yours truly at times on the Ticats Audio Network. Time to bring in my good man, Mike Daly. Thanks for joining us, partner.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bubs. Always good to keep talking with you. You seem to make this everyday thing now, you and I going back and forth, right?
Still chatting about the sport that we love so much. I got to ask you, how's life?
It's good. Like you said, back to school. Mm-hmm. So today was I got to drop my kids off at school, and it was the day one. I live in Waterloo now, so that's first day of schools today, and dropped my daughter off and my son off. It was chaos there. There's crying kids everywhere. You're trying to get them all organized, but now everybody's back to school. My wife's a teacher, so I'm alone in the house while I'm working throughout the day. So it's a little bit less chaotic, a little more quiet.
They just didn't want to go to school?
Oh, no, they were okay. My kids were okay going to school. They're used to it now. My son's in grade 1. My daughter's in SK. But there was other kids that it was their first day ever. Okay. And obviously in the kindergarten lineup, it is just tears galore, screaming, kicking, rolling around on the ground, and it's chaos.
The best part, I guess, for a former football player like yourself, it's now into routine season, though, I guess, really.
It is, yeah. And I'm, like you said, I'm so used to being routine that if I ever get out of routine, I don't know if it's just habit, it's comfortable. So yeah, being able to wake up, make the lunches, get them to school, I know how my day works, which is nice, and I'm used to that kind of stuff.
You know, I want to go right back to your days at McMaster. Those were important days for you. I would say those were the foundation years. Obviously, you had your high schooling. You figured out you wanted to play football. But you come into a Marauders program, which is pretty good, and got better.
Yeah, and it was a lot with the coaches that were there. At the time, it was Greg Knox was my defensive coordinator. Mark Forsyth was my defensive backs coach. And in high school, I didn't play a ton of football. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was more like a rugby and hockey player growing up. So McMaster is where I learned how to play the game and the understanding of the game. So Greg Knox was a great DC for us there, and he taught me a lot about what it was to be a defensive back, and I played safety there, and so did he with Calgary Stampeders. So I learned quite a bit from him. But yeah, those were definitely the years where I started to think about what I was doing out there on the field. There was a lot of years before that where it was just I was out there and they'd throw the ball over there. I said, okay, I guess I got to go run and tackle that. So I started to understand the game at Mac, and you know, we had a good team and a good set of coaches, so it was a lot of fun.
You played in what some arguably say is the greatest university game of all time at BC Place. Still big memories for that?
Big memories, yeah. Everybody says the greatest game, and I was just stressed out the whole time. And I say stressed out jokingly. It was just a regular game for us, but it was one of these ones where we were up big to start, and then we let them back in. So you could imagine the feeling on the sideline where you're just like, oh man, okay, we got to dig deep, and then it goes into overtime, and then to double overtime, and you're just try not to make any mistake because you're like, one mistake at this point could be the game. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. The biggest thing about that is at the time of the Vanier for university football players, it's also finals season. So you're trying to write your final papers. You're trying to do your exams. And it's a hard thing to balance when you're prepping for a Vanier Cup in a different city. We were BC at the time, in a different city throughout the entire festivities of the week, because at that time, Bubs, it was where the CFL and the Vanier were played back to back, right? So it was in the same city, and I miss that they do that. And we can
I don't know why they don't.
It's dumb that they don't do that anymore, but it was a lot going on. And I remember I had a couple profs that were like, no, we're not giving you extension. you're a student first, so you better finish this, I think it was a 25-page paper that I had to do throughout the week of the Vanier. And, being a football player and a student at the same time, obviously I left it all until last minute, right? So I had to fill out all of that stuff, but it was chaos. But yeah, it was a whirlwind. Looking back on it now, though, those are some of my friends for the rest of life. So it was fun to do it with them.
And you beat, and as I should have said from the beginning, you played Laval.
Yeah.
To this day, still a national powerhouse. Probably McMaster's still a good football team, OUA team, but Laval were heavily favored in there. And the way the game played out, as you said, was just like a knockout game in front of a massive crowd.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. And again, because they did it on the same time as the Grey Cup. So it's super beneficial to have those back to back. But yeah, the nice thing that we did in preseason that year is Laval picks and chooses who they want for preseason. So they'll invite them down to training camp. And so they invited us down knowing that we were going to be pretty good. We had Kyle Quinlan at quarterback who was awesome. So we went down there for training camp. So it wasn't as much of a shock factor as most teams have when they get to those national finals like the Vanier, where you're playing a team like Montreal Laval, who are those powerhouses. We had a little taste of it in training camp and realized as we left training camp in the preseason game, we're like, oh, we can play with these guys. It's really not that much of a different game. So going into that Vanier, we were as confident as could be and showed it at the beginning. Obviously let him back in, like I said, but yeah, it wasn't a shock factor for us. And, Big Bad Laval for sure if we hadn't gone there preseason. But we went there, we did really well. So it was, okay, these guys aren't really that much different.
Best part about it, and I don't know how you feel about this, and I know when I go to watch a game at McMaster, when you go to Ron Joyce Stadium, there's that big plaque up there. You will never not be reminded of that, right? It's there forever.
It is, and it's huge, and that's because it's the only one. So, hopefully just for my alma mater, it'll more will come up there. But it is really cool going back there. Like I said, in university football, those are your friends that you make for the rest of your life. Still guys I hang out with today that we get our kids together, I see all the time. So to have that reminder every time we go back there is really cool. Because it's a little different when you get to the pros. It's, you're not seeing them at class. You're not seeing them throughout the day. It's just a business side of it. So really cool to go back to Ron Joyce all the time. We just played there. I coach at Laurier, and we played there week 1 this season. So going back through the halls, seeing all the people that were still around when I was there, it's cool. It's nostalgic for sure.
I don't think this is a surprise to you, but I will say this. You were a 6th-round draft pick in the Canadian Football League, 2013?
That's right, yeah.
Not a lot of 6th-round draft picks play for a decade.
Yeah.
You got to be pretty proud.
Yeah, I was proud. I always make, so Drew Alamang, the head of Canadian scouting for the Ticats, a good friend of mine now. I really got to know him, but I always joke with him where, hey, you should have taken me earlier. I know you left me for a 6th round and whatever it might have been, but no, I am proud of that. It's I was always just trying to learn football as I was going on. I didn't start playing it till grade 9. Didn't really know what I was doing in grade 9. Was hit or miss. So I didn't really learn the game until my first year at university. I was just running around trying to figure out how to translate hockey and rugby into football. So I was proud of that. But it was also another situation where the Ticats and Drew Alamang, like I said, it was Sean Burke at the time. Those two were unbelievable at developing football players. And in the pro sports world, you don't really see that all that much. You see guys get drafted and it's like, okay, are they going to work out this year or next year? No, let's get rid of them. Right? Drew Alamang, Sean Burke are awesome at saying, okay, he has something that we can see. And for me, it was my football IQ. He knows the game. He played multiple positions at Max. So let's bring him in. He can learn it and he can get better and understand it. And they did similar stuff with a Stavros Katsantonis, who's now, right? It's these high football IQ guys that, I tested okay, but not off the charts. So that won't get you a high draft pick, right? Same thing with Stav that I was talking about. But Drew and Sean, they see more than that in those players, and I'm thankful for those guys being around, but they were the ones that gave me the opportunity that allowed me as a 6th-round pick to play a long career with the Ticats because of, you know, what they saw in me. So I'm proud of it. But also, yeah, I wish, you know, the higher you get drafted, the bigger your signing bonus is. So I always wish it was a little bit higher, but no, it worked out and it was a good time.
Was there any kind of aha moment when you're a pro and you're saying, I can't believe I'm playing pro ball?
First year, no, it was a whirlwind. My first year in the pros, absolute whirlwind. Second year, I got a ton of starts on defense. And once I started making some plays, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm starting to get comfortable with this. And then that's when I was probably like, hey, I'm actually doing this for real at the pro level, right? And you don't really think about it when you're in a first year. You're like, okay, just, you know, don't mess up today. And then it's like, okay, don't mess up this week. And then, okay, make sure I'm just doing my thing for the game. And then once you start making some plays, you're like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. I can play here. I can do this. I feel comfortable now. So yeah, it was probably my second year once I felt a little more comfortable to be like, hey, this is a pretty cool situation.
You're on at least one of the teams that, you know, for Tiger Cat fans, nearly tasted that Grey Cup.
Oh, yeah.
I hate to bring it, but I mean, what's it like? I mean, we talk about it, and we've talked about it on the audio network before. Mike Morreale said it several times. 99, he wishes he wasn't the last,
right.
You know, representative of a team that has won a Grey Cup in Hamilton. You had a couple of tastes.
Yeah.
Close.
3 of them. One we got blown out. Yeah.
Oh, there was 2.
Yeah, 3 of them. One we got blown out in Calgary by Winnipeg. That would have been 2019. That's when we had the most wins as a Ticats franchise.
15-3 team.
Yeah.
That was a team everyone thought you'd win for sure.
Yeah, and we just hit a hot Winnipeg team, and it wasn't even close. But the other 2 I was in, I believe was 2021, the one at home. Against Winnipeg, where Mazzoli and, you know, the infamous play with Mazzoli throwing the out tackle in, and I think it was Nichols getting their hand in there. But the one that stings the most is the 2014 one, and that's the one in BC Place against Calgary, and Speedy takes that punt return back to the house, and we get the holding penalty. I remember I was on the field at that time, so I'm blocking my guy, and Speedy comes around the corner, and you know, you couldn't be more happy because you're like, oh my God, we just won the Grey Cup on this play. I was on the field, I was getting all excited, right? And it was, you know, that was my first year, and I was like, hey, this is easy, right? We went to the Grey Cup, just won it, and then you see the flag, and looking back on everything now, hard to make it to a Grey Cup, number one, so I didn't really realize that. And then that's probably my biggest regret is I wish I'd give up a few of those years that I played to get a Grey Cup, just because the joy that you see other teammates that have won a Grey Cup have. So I'm with Mike Morreale. I'm with Hitch. Hitch says it all the time too. He's like, listen, we don't want to keep being brought back out to say, hey, these are the last guys that won a Grey Cup. I was hoping to be there, but my time's gone now. So hopefully it happens sooner than later, because Tiger Town deserves one, and the stuff that we've been through and the change of the stadium and how well of a job Bob Young has done and Scott Mitchell. Tiger Town deserves one, and it was there was a couple close ones, but yeah, every time we bring it up, I feel a little sting, you know what I mean, in the heart.
You don't have to answer the question, but should the flag have been thrown?
Yeah, I'll answer it. It should have. It was a block in the back.
Oh!
The problem is, though, and so I coach special teams now. The problem is the block didn't need to be made. And it's one of those things where you train, and it's the beauty of football, right? You train at that point, what would it have been? 22 games, 21 games, and weeks of training. Hey, don't take penalties on special teams. Let's stay away from there. And football is just a game of mistakes, and it's just when the mistake happens and who's able to capitalize on those mistakes and who makes less mistakes. And at that point, those type of plays happen all season long that you try to correct. And there was other mistakes that happened in the game, but that's the one that gets posted. And yeah, the block didn't need to be made, but it definitely was. So it's not like it was a phantom call, because I'd be more upset about that and probably would have thrown this mic when you brought it up, but it definitely was. So yeah, it's frustrating.
Oh, his name will remain nameless, but
I'm not saying
not saying it, but unfortunately it's got to hurt him as well too. Hey, one of the reasons why I think your legacy will always last here in Hamilton as a player is that you took time to not only dedicate, your body and your mind and your time to football, but you dedicated it to the community as well too. Why was that important to you?
Yeah, it was just something that I had started doing when I was at Mac. There's a program called Mac Athletes Care. So when I was a student athlete there, I got into it a little bit, and we would go over to the hospital. We'd go down to some schools, and I started realizing, hey, I enjoy this. I get, a little bit of fulfillment out there trying to, put a smile on somebody else's face throughout the day. And I enjoyed helping out where I could, and I'd do it around the university. I'd do it with that Mac Athletes Care. So when I got to the Ticats, they do such a good job at integrating that team with the community, and had a ton of different programs that you could get involved with. And luckily, I was a local guy at the time living in Hamilton, and I could be at every event that I wanted to be at. So at the time, it was Spencer Boehm was the head of community department. And I just told him, I was like, hey, I enjoy doing this. Bring me out to every single thing you have. And so I was going to, you name it, like food share programs, cooking in kitchens, going to school programs to talk to some of the kids, playing touch football on the field, whatever it was, I wanted to be out there and do it. And as I started doing that, I started meeting more and more people in the community of Hamilton, because I was so focused on being a student at Mac at the time. And then now I'm meeting people that are outside of that community, and developed relationships and just started doing more and more things. And with a pro athlete lifestyle, you can work in the off season, and I did, but you have a lot of spare time. And at the time I didn't have kids. It was just me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time. And she was coaching and she was busy. So I might as well fill my time doing this kind of stuff. And I just enjoyed it more and more and more. And now that I have kids, I want them to get involved with it and see it and be involved. Because you don't get, I've said this a couple of times, but you don't get to where you are by yourself. So for me to play pro football, it wasn't just me getting there. There was a lot of people that were helping me. And if I can insert myself into different people's lives to try to help, or at least put a smile on someone's face, I'll do it. And I keep trying to be involved as much as possible now, but I enjoyed every moment of it. And I can do it as much as I can now, but to have the Ticats backing, to have McMaster's backing and be involved in those programs, that'll stick with me for the rest of life.
That's why you win the Tom Pate Award as someone that represented the team, that took time out, that gave back. I know it's an award, but to be recognized by the Canadian Football League, what a special moment that was. I remember I was right there when you got that award, and I was just like, good for you. Good for you, dude. Yeah,
it was cool. And a little background knowledge there is, when I won that award, so the year I won the award, I was dealing with a pretty bad injury, really the injury that ended my career. I ended up having pretty bad nerve damage in my neck. It was, I believe it was week 2. It was week 1 I heard it against Winnipeg, and that was in that Grey Cup year, the 2021 year, I believe. And I was out for the majority of the season. I really lost movement in my arm for about 7, 8, 9 weeks, I believe. I couldn't lift it up past my body at all. Wow. And I had my kids at the time too, and I couldn't pick them up. And I was like, whoa, so it was a real low moment for me, where I was pretty stressed out, and I just was filling my time with treatment and doing as many of the events that I could, because I wasn't practicing, I wasn't playing. So I had all those opportunities to do that. And then sure enough, I ended up getting healthy, and that was the day before the Grey Cup, or 2 days before the Grey Cup, and I was actually healthy for the Grey Cup, so I got to play in that. Had a bunch of stuff taped up, maybe dumb at the time. Like thinking about it now, pretty.
You want to play, man. It's a great
stupid.
cup.
Yeah, but I wanted to play, and there's an opportunity for it. But I missed the majority of the season because my arm was essentially shut off. So to then win that at the time, it was a real boost of confidence for me right before that Grey Cup, because it was a tough season for me personally, and I wasn't sure, what that was going to lead to, because at the time I think I would have been, 31 or 32, and when you have an injury like that old in football, you kind of see the writing on the wall, and I knew that, my neck and nerve wouldn't hold up for a very long period of time, so I might get that one more game in out of it, and so I was just excited to win that, excited to play in the Grey Cup. So those 2 days for me were pretty emotional, on emotional high. But that's a little background on that. And I was excited, and it was just, it's the icing on the cake. Like I said, I'd still do it. I still do get involved in the community. But to be recognized for it, that's pretty cool.
When you make that decision to retire, there are so many factors. And you're right, football is a business. And sometimes decisions are made for you.
Yeah.
But you had an opportunity to come back for one little stint. And what was the mindset there?
Yeah, it was, so I decided, after that season, like I said, my arm was pretty messed up. I was nervous about my, my injury and what that would be long term. So I was okay with not playing that next season. And then, sure enough, Drew Alaman calls me. So I'm working, and I've been working all off season. So I was, prepped for life after football and stuff like that. And then Drew Alaman calls me just one day. I was driving home from work, and he calls me. He goes, "Hey, we're about to get into this playoff run. We have a spot, and we kind of need someone to be a, you always hear the term locker room guy, and come in as a vet." And he said, "Do you want to come in? It's the last week of the season. You can come in. Not sure if you'll play or not, but need someone to come in and be a part of this run." And I was like, you know what? This is exactly what I said to him. I was like, I got to call my wife, and I got to call work, because I'm going to have to organize both these things. I'm not going to quit my job, because I'm going to need this after. And I need to make sure the kids and everybody's going to be okay, because I was, taking care of them as well. So I called everybody and tried to organize it. Work was like, "Hey, just take."
What did your wife say?
She was like, first, right off the bat, she's like, "Oh, so you'll have to go back to practices and stuff?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna have to go back to doing that. So I don't know how much I'll be seeing you, and plus with work." So I call work, and so I was like, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, absolutely." Call work, and I was like, I'll get some, take time off. We'll help you, whatever you need to do. So I was actually, after practices, was taking work meetings in Coach Mark Washington's office, or at the time, Tommy Condell's. I was taking work meetings in our coaches' offices and closing the doors, and they were going to do work other places so that I could do it. So it was a whirlwind. But no, it was cool. The best part about that, and I remember the conversation with my wife, was, "Hey, the kids are older now. Once I'm practicing, and say yes to this, bring them out to as many practices as we can." So as soon as I started practicing, my wife was down there almost every day with them on the field. So they were a little bit older at the time, and my son might have been, I guess he would have been 4.5, and he still remembers that stuff. So it was really cool to be down there. I had my helmet and all that stuff, so they could experience it. But yeah, it was those few weeks. I think it was 3 or 4 total weeks. That was a whirlwind. And I don't know how we got through it, but we got through it, and it was fun.
That must have been real fun, and it was great because it was such big news. Mike Daly's coming back. Hold on, how did he medically get cleared to play? And after what you were going through, it was amazing. And I know, for just talking to other players at that time, it was a big boost for them to have a guy like yourself with that kind of experience and knowledge. And everyone likes Mike Daly, and I think it was great to have you in the locker room. So I'd obviously sort of worked out. I mean, it didn't bring a Grey Cup, but I mean, it certainly boosted the spirits of the team, obviously, when they needed. They certainly, great call by Drew there to get you in there. You talk about retirement, and again, we move on. And the best part about this, I think, is that you've kind of translated your skills, your experience, your knowledge of the game into what's called the Ticats Audio Network. And I think that's you tell me, but this is just my guess from an outsider, from a broadcaster standpoint, and watching guys like you and Luke. You're still in touch with the game. Your body's not getting beaten up.
Yep.
But you still, that love of the game is still coming out.
Yeah, and that's when I was approached to do that with the Ticat Audio Network, and I initially started on the game day with Courtney Stephen. It was actually Courtney was the one that vouched for me to come in, and our producer Dave Cadeau was, hey Court, do you know anybody that would be good at this? And already Luke Tasker was in there, Andy Fantuz, Courtney had been in there, and he was like, yeah, I think Mike would be good, and he asked me, and when I first started doing it, I was like, yeah, you know what, this would be something fun to do. And then now as we're doing it more and more, you're bang on with it. It keeps me involved in football, and I'm coaching, and that's a different involvement, but it keeps me involved in football, but it also keeps me involved in the Ticats, and it keeps me involved in that community, because we're at the games and home games, we're on that fourth floor, and we get to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it's a little loud when we're trying to do our show and we can't get through it. But it's a really cool way to not be as involved as being like a coach for the Ticats or anything, because that's a different lifestyle completely that I don't really want to get into. But to be able to go there, do it once a week, be involved with that community, get my fix on football, and talk objectively about what's going on the field, both teams, and hang out with you. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it, and it's like a social aspect for me. It's keeping me involved with the Ticats and everything that I've done there, and seeing the people that I developed those relationships with the community. Mm-hmm. Most of my games, I always laugh because home games, we have the crowd, everybody's there. There's so many people to talk to. So I actually watch less of the game, and I have to kind of pay attention.
And I'm pulling you here and there too. They want to talk to you.
But that's because of all the relationships I developed as a player, and I love those. Mm-hmm. I love those conversations. The away games, those are the easy ones to do because you're just locked into what's going on. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where it stays involved. I enjoy doing it. It's once a week, so you get the taste, and then you can leave and disappear for a little bit. So I'm thankful for the Ticats Audio Network, and we keep building, and we now know people are coming up to us constantly saying, hey, love what you're doing. Hey, love what you're doing. So the audience is building, and a lot more people are listening as it goes on. So I'm excited to see where it goes, but it's fun while we're doing it.
What's really fun for me, from a standpoint of just the broadcaster guy, is watching when people like Simone, like all these players that you played with, and we have this alumnus of distinction, and they bring back guys, and many of them you've played with, and I just sort of introduce the segment in a lot of these cases, or even when we're on the field or whatever, I just like to sit back and watch you guys and listen to you guys talk as former teammates. It's such a thrill for me.
And you hear it all the time. It's what do you miss most about playing? Like, what do you miss most about the professional athlete lifestyle? And what it is it's the locker room. You hear that all the time. Right? But how do you put that into context? What does that mean? You always hear that, I miss a locker room, And it's honestly just hanging out with your buddies, right? Like how we're sitting down talking about whatever, that happened day after day after day after day with different people. A football team is so big, you could talk to somebody new every day and not get through everybody. So you're just joking, you're having fun, and you just talk about anything and everything, right? The MJ Jordan argument comes up all the time, right? And people are fighting and arguing and stuff like that. So that's what you miss the most, so that when now those alumnus distinctions come back, or the people that are working with the Ticat Audio Network, you spent the majority of 10 years with these people, and now you just get to have those conversations again. And that's what I mean. That's what I love about it. It's the social aspect that you get out of it. And to see those guys again, like you can just tell when we get together, it's, you know, we can't say everything on there.
No,
we would want to.
I'm saying that right now.
Yeah. And as soon as that segment's going over, that's why you see us stand up, walk over into a private little area and have those conversations. But it's awesome. It's awesome to talk to those guys again.
Got to give it a little plug only because it's exactly what you're saying there. That Morreale and Hitch podcast is that to a T. And sometimes they go a little over the board because it's just YouTube, but and it's not like network television. But boy, some of the stories, boy, man, like, and anyone that's played professional sports, you would know this, male or female. It is, I mean, there's something about the wins and losses, but the practices, the parties, the family get-togethers, there's always great stories that come of that. Yeah,
there is, and you're right. The Morreale and Hitch show, that is as close as you can get to it, and I'm sure they're even censoring a little bit of it, but it is that's exactly what it is, and that's why it's so fun to do it. Like, you get out there and you take your job seriously as a professional athlete. You want to be the best on the field at all times, but when you get off the field and into the locker room, like, you just turn into a big kid. So I was lucky to just be a big kid for 10 more years of my life playing a game. So you see that come out when you meet up with some of those old teammates.
Speaking of big kid, I felt like a big kid a couple of days ago. This Labor Day Classic felt different than the rest. And I don't know this, I mean, the 25,000, that was the biggest crowd they've had in a number of years now. And we've seen this before. Even sometimes when the Ticats and whoever they're playing, it's a close game. There are fans that start to leave or whatever. And you hear me sometimes like, "Where are you going?" And they're like, "Gotta beat the traffic." No one wanted to beat the traffic this day. No. This game was awesome.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of it, too, was just the struggles that the Ticats have been having this season and of recent seasons. And then all of a sudden this Labor Day comes in, and we've talked about this a million times, but people really only care if you beat the Argos on Labor Day. And they truly did, and it was such a good game from start to finish. And, like, I know personally, you and I were sitting down talking about it throughout the game, and it was just back and forth, big play after big play for the Ticats. You're like, holy cow, like, this is a different feeling game. And to have the crowd involved early and often was a lot of fun. And at the end of that game, we always have that post-game show where we get to talk to Coach Milanovic and the player of the game, and Tasker and RJ as well. And you could tell how much fun we were having because you're like, that was an awesome game. That was a lot of fun to be a part of. The fans were in it the entire game. And we were itching for that a little bit, right, for a home game. So, yeah, that Labor Day was one of the more fun ones I can remember, especially since being an analyst. And as a player, I've said this multiple times, those are my favorite games to play in. So when it is such a good game like that, and it's a nice day, and everybody's out there and sticking around, that makes the atmosphere awesome. And, we could feel it, that's for sure.
I'll end on this here because Tiger Town would be very upset with me if I didn't throw this question to you. We've hit that point of Labor Day where they say in the CFL, like, I mean, it's so old, but it's been around for so long, and it's said all the time, the CFL really kicks in at Labor Day. The stretch drive is here. 6 and 7 games for most teams remaining. Ticats with 3 wins. Do they got a chance to make the playoffs?
They do, and the reason people say the season doesn't start until Labor Day is because before Labor Day, you have to treat it as a big, long preseason where you're trying to figure out your team, trying to figure out your roster. There's guys coming in and out. Okay, we have never tackled in training camp. We've never tackled in practice. Now we got to figure out in a game, can guys go out there and be physical? And that's a hard thing to quantify when you're just in practice tagging off on ball carriers. Nobody's going to tackle in practice anymore. That's just how it is. So you can't figure out all of that stuff until you're 5, 6, 7 games into a season. That's why they say it doesn't start till Labor Day. And what you see is typically the team that wins the Grey Cup is the one that gets hot from Labor Day on. You just need to be the hot team that's rolling into playoffs. And Ticats have a chance. After that win against the Argos, what they did in Winnipeg, where considering where they've been at the beginning of the season, there was a big time energy difference in that Winnipeg game. They didn't end up winning it, but there was a huge energy difference.
They could have won that.
They could have, for sure.
Yeah.
And making plays all over the place that you didn't see them make before that. So I feel this team is getting hot to win that tight game against a good Argos team with Chad Kelly back and, them having their team that they won the Grey Cup with back there. They're getting hot at the right time, getting into a bye week now. Now they're excited, right? They're going to come back with a newfound energy. If they can just put another 2 wins together, watch out, because that team is going to be rolling and cooking into playoffs. And it doesn't matter what that record was at the beginning. You get into playoffs, and if you're on a roll, anybody can win the Grey Cup. So, yeah, I think they have a chance. They have some big ones coming up. The one against Ottawa after the bye week's going to be huge, but with that win they had that we talked about, there's a huge chance for the Ticats to push.
And with the messy West, there's the West sort of crossover. Like, that could be in play.
That could
be. Everyone's sort of looking at the East standings and saying, whoa, the Argos are going to have to go on and lose. Like, they're looking at that. But it's like, well, this may happen, crossover going the other direction. I think in the years where we had a crossover, it's always the West team going to the East. But there could be, if the Tiger Cats continue this little roll or find some momentum and get some wins, and boy, the West, they're all beating each other. The top teams, 500. Bombers are kind of in trouble with some injuries.
Edmonton just had a good game against Calgary.
Calgary,
you're
Calgary.
Not sure what's going on.
Don't know what's going on in Saskatchewan as well too. It could happen.
It could, and that's why the Ticats getting hot at this point, which you hope, right? It is one win, but it was a big one, and it did look vastly different than our other ones. But them getting a win at this point and just putting their head down and trying to stack these wins and this momentum, you're not really sure how it's going to shake out, but there now are 2 opportunities as opposed to, hey, just catch the Argos, just catch the Argos. Now there's more things opening up. So, yeah, I know we were down and out probably 2 or 3 weeks ago where we were like, oh, man, is it going to be one of these? But there's a newfound optimism, I think, at least in the Ticats audio network. I know there's a newfound optimism, so I hope that radiates throughout Tiger Town.
Well, hey, what's radiated here is just your attitude and your expertise about the game. It's a pleasure for me to work alongside you as well, too. It's been awesome to watch your career as well, too, especially as that guy, that maybe, like you said, wasn't the fastest or whatever, and you did everything right, and that's the best part about it. So it's been a pleasure to watch you play on the field, a pleasure to work with you now and get to know you as a man and as a former football player and a dad now and a husband. It's been a pleasure, Mike. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Sportsline Podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And listen, it's fun doing this every single week with you. It's fun doing these other things with you too, and you just radiate energy all the time, so you make it very, very easy for somebody like me to get into it because of your professionalism and how good you are at what you do. And I hope it just keeps going up and up for us both with the audio network and whatever else we do.
It's playoffs.
Here we go.
Playoffs. Thanks for joining us, Mike. Hey, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And as you just seen and heard, we love talking sports. We love talking Ticats. Go home team. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast do want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. Share as well, too. And if you have something to say, please comment, because we appreciate what you have to say. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.